Listen, you smell something?
Human emotions are materializing in the form of a viscous psychoreactive plasm with explosive supernormal potential.
What a discovery, a psychoreactive substance.
Do you know what this equipment is used for?
Boggle or Super Mario Brothers?
We'll have fun!
They're still doing it. Really quite good work there.
My friend, don't be a jerk.
We've got no choice. Call the Ghostbusters.
Super Jackpot!
Welcome to Extraplasm Podcast. It's the only podcast on the internet that firmly believes that just as the shape of a Slimer's booty is key to consumer marketing and influencer strategies, so too is the proper bulge of a Stay Puft's belly. Look it up. I'm your host, Jim Maritato, aka Vink Maniac on the internet, and I'm excited to be bringing you another episode of Extraplasm as we dig into some of what the folks over at TCU Collectibles, aka the Containment Unit, over on Facebook, are going to be doing with the end of their June. That's right, Tom Henry and Matt Sanders are joining us this week as we dig into what they're going to be doing with their Busters Across California 2 trip, which we have not quite settled on the title of yet. If you get through this entire episode, you'll find that it's still in the spitball phase, but I'm confident by the time they get there, I'm going to come up with a great subtitle for this, just like I did last year. But beyond that, I'm so excited to have Matt and Tom on the show this week because they're both great friends of the show. They're both great together, like peanut butter and chocolate. And even when they come on individually, they're great like peanut butter and chocolate because both of those things are great separate, just as much as they are together, right? But I digress. I'm totally excited that they get to join us this week as we find out a bit about what they're going to be doing with their private signings. They're going to be meeting up with several folks who were in Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, folks who've worked on Ghostbusters films over the course of the last 40 years, etc. And they get to share with us a bit this week about what they have coming up and what you might be able to get involved in. One key thing I want to say at the top of the episode, because we kind of forgot to say it until the end of our talk, is that if you are interested in anything you find out about today from the folks over the Containment Unit, as you're listening to the episode, you could, of course, find them at TCU Collectibles on Facebook. And there's posts over there showing you exactly what your options are for 8x10s and all kinds of stuff that we're going to talk about later on in this episode. So it was really great to have Matt and Tom on because they're friends of the show. They're really interesting, compelling people who have a lot to say about Ghostbusters. And it's really awesome that they're going to be getting another set of opportunities for folks to get things signed. So we'll hear a little bit about that in a few moments. But before we can get into that, we need to get into this week's Ghostbusters headlines.
Still making headlines all across the country, the Ghostbusters are at it again.
Today, the entire eastern seaboard is alive with talk of incidents of paranormal activity.
Phone-in topic today, ghosts and ghost busting.
Extraplasm, read all about it. Ghostbusters headlines coming at ya.
Usually to start off our headlines segment, I like to start with Ghostbusters official media news or Ghostbusters Frozen Empire news over the last few months. But just a few days or a few weeks out of the year, we get to focus on something called Ghostbusters Day news. And I'm going to put that up front this week because there's actually some official news about a Sony-related event that'll be happening for Ghostbusters Day. You've heard a bit about what our friends at Buffalo Ghostbusters and the NYC Ghostbusters have been preparing at Hook and Ladder 8, which of course is an amazing event that I'm going to be at. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about opportunities they have for folks to be involved in supporting firefighters in New York City in a few minutes. But I want to talk for a few minutes about an amazing thing that's happening in the city of Los Angeles. And if you're listening to the podcast just as it drops, then you may be hearing this here first before you hear it anywhere else. The Los Angeles Ghostbusters are going to be having an event with Sony and Starlight Children's Foundation and the city of Los Angeles at City Hall on June 7th at 10 in the morning, where they are going to be commemorating the film Ghostbusters, and the city of Los Angeles is going to officially proclaim June 8th as Ghostbusters Day. They are advertising that Jason Reitman and the Ecto-1 will be on hand and more. There's going to be a ceremony, like I said, at 10 o'clock in the morning in the city council chambers, and then a reception to follow in the rotunda. This is all happening at City Hall at 200 North Spring Street on Friday, June 7th, the day before the actual Ghostbusters Day. Now, what does that mean? If we're going to have an actual Ghostbusters Day in the city of Los Angeles being proclaimed by the city, does that mean that perhaps there is something happening elsewhere in the city of Los Angeles on the same weekend that might also celebrate the 40th anniversary of Ghostbusters? And the big answer at the moment is, who knows? You should probably keep an eye on Ghostbusters social media, on Ghostbusters news, on Extraplasm, and my smart money would be on following the LA Ghostbusters, because if there's another event happening in LA that weekend, it's probably going to involve the very people who are helping to proclaim it Ghostbusters Day in the city of Los Angeles. I'm just going to throw that out there. Not because I know anything, just because I'm using logic and, what is that called? Deductive reasoning? Anyway, the point is that there's something happening in LA. If you are on the West Coast at this point, or if you are nearby and you want to be involved in a Ghostbusters Day celebration, know that there is officially going to be an LA City proclamation of Ghostbusters Day happening at the City Council chambers with a reception to follow in the Rotunda, 10 o'clock in the morning, 200 North Spring Street, Los Angeles. Flight suits encouraged and readily welcomed. This would be my advice in this context. Okay, so if you're in the area, feel free to come on out for that. But if you're not in the area and you are on the East Coast and you're going to be in New York, obviously that event is still happening. And the things that are happening with relationship to the Buffalo Ghostbusters organization of the Hook and Ladder 8 event is really just amazing. And I want to just highlight a couple key things as we're talking about Ghostbusters Day for you to know about, because they happened since Dan and Chris were on the show last week. They now have made public several additional fundraising opportunities that are going to benefit the Tunnel to Towers Foundation and that help to celebrate Ghostbusters Day by supporting folks in FDNY and firefighters in New York City. And so one thing that you should know about is that there's now an auction available for a Spengler family poster. This is a signed preview poster for Ghostbusters Frozen Empire that has already been signed by Paul Rudd, who's like basically unobtainium in terms of getting an autograph unless you want to spend hundreds of dollars. Callie Spengler, of course, Carrie Coon, and McKenna Grace. They're also working to try and get Finn Wolfhard to complete this poster before the auction ends, but they're not guaranteeing it. If you don't have Finn Wolfhard on there, I mean, he does enough conventions and things that you can probably get this poster at auction and then have him sign it and complete it. It's something that's really amazing. And I got to say, like, it's a really cool piece and idea as like sort of a family poster. It actually has written on it, Happy Ghostbusters Day 2024. It's got a little message from each of the signers on it, and it's really cool. You can check this out, of course, over at buffaloghostbusters.com. An additional auction item that they have now made available since coming on the podcast that is really unique and amazing. They have been given 2 tiles that were excess tiles from the Firehouse set that have been signed by Dan Aykroyd and Ernie Hudson. One of them has signed each of these tiles. These are the green tiles that you would find in the Ghostbusters garage bay. They're sort of iconic. They are not, to be clear, from the original Firehouse in Los Angeles, but they are additional or backup tiles that were available from when they constructed the set. And each of them has been signed. These are outstanding. Like, they're the coolest thing I think I've seen in a really long time that I really want. I probably will not win these in auction because they are already going for quite a pretty penny at over $2,000. But they, from my standpoint, are very worth every penny. They are very cool, very unique. And to have something that was essentially on set and signed by 2 principal actors who've been involved in Ghostbusters for the last 40 years is pretty damn amazing. And then there is a raffle that they've announced that for a cast sign poster. This is essentially a Ghostbusters Frozen Empire preview poster that has signatures from Bill Murray, Paul Rudd, Dan Aykroyd, Carrie Coon, Ernie Hudson, McKenna Grace, Patton Oswalt, Annie Potts, Logan Kim. I mean, virtually everybody's on here. I'm pretty sure even the Finn Wolfhard squiggles in here. So it seems to be a full cast poster that's been signed. It's pretty damn amazing and pretty much unobtainium. For whoever wins this, it's outstanding. You can buy raffle tickets for this for $10 each. And all of this stuff is happening via betterworld.org. You can get to the listings most easily by going to buffaloghostbusters.com and then following through and like looking at the varied announcements that they've put out for Ghostbusters Day. But, just to sort of let you know, all this money is being raised via Better World. So there's a lot of revenue that's going to be going through, the proper channels for charity collection that make sure it goes into 501c3's hands, etc., as opposed to just getting squandered off by people who drive away in an Ecto-1 and buy beer with it, which, of course, the Buffalo Ghostbusters would never do. We all know that they're awesome and do a great job of running this charity effort every year. A couple other quick announcements to know about from that event. Extraplasm, our friend Chris Sorrentino, who also is the artist behind the REEL Ghostbusters, Real Ghostbusters series, where he reconceptualizes the scenes from the original movie using the cartoon characters. He is putting out an exclusive art print that will only be available on the day. that essentially is a real Ghostbusters version of the classic photo of the Ghostbusters in front of the firehouse that's black and white, and that you may recall being featured in the marketing for Ghostbusters Afterlife. This is really amazing. If you want to grab one of these, look for the guy who's dressed like Jake Blues outside the firehouse at Ghostbusters Day in New York. That is Chris, and I'm definitely going to run up to him because I absolutely want to get one of these, and I hope that he'll sign it because it's totally cool and a gorgeous piece. And it's amazing. And then, of course, I want to let you know that Ryan Espin and the New York City Ghostbusters have essentially released the group of tour stops that they'll be going to, the itinerary for the location tour with the NYC Ghostbusters. That walking tour will be setting off at 2 p.m. from Hook and Ladder 8 and will take approximately 4 hours to complete. You'll be going from Hook and Ladder 8 to the Statue of Liberty and the Museum of the American Indian, and then going to the New York Public Library with Times Square and Columbus Circle involved along the way, and apparently then Columbus Circle and 55 Central Park West. So this is going to be a 4-stop tour, essentially, but about 6 locations, it looks like, if I'm counting right. If I'm not counting right, don't blame me. I'm not a mathematician. I am merely a paranormal podcaster of sorts. But this is an amazing thing I'm going to definitely do while I'm in New York. I didn't get to do the walking tour during the premiere, and to have the opportunity to do it just a few months later is really cool, especially because this is going to be an opportunity to go on this tour and do it with probably hundreds of people dressed in flight suits. This was one of the iconic things that happens at this event, is that everyone piles into the subway together dressed as Ghostbusters to go off on a walking tour throughout the city, where everyone in New York City for 4 hours goes, "What the hell is going on?" And everybody probably makes lots of jokes about how there's something strange in the neighborhood. But this is a really cool thing. I'm totally excited to be doing it. And I hope that if you are coming out to the event, that you will join us in coming out for the walking tour. And I know last week I joked that I was just going to take it over and get a megaphone and try and podcast in the middle of it, but I'm not going to. But that being said, if you find me outside Hook and Ladder 8, or if you see me on the walking tour, you may see me trying to get comments and sort of interview segments from folks, because my plan is to be able to provide some coverage of the event and to shoot some video and potentially stream some of it as we're out there, sort of enjoying the day. So if you're out there at Hook and Ladder 8, do come by and say hi, because I want to talk to you and just meet you, but I also may want to just talk to you and be like, "Hey, what are you doing? Do you want to answer some questions about what it's like to be here?" So that we can let other people know about it. Okay, so that is your Ghostbusters Day news. So if you're in the LA area, absolutely go out and help support that event and keep your eyes peeled, because, hey, maybe something else will happen too. And if you're not in the LA area and you're out on the East Coast, then come on out and join us at Hook and Ladder 8, because it's going to be a total blast. Okay, so with the Ghostbusters Day news out of the way, let's talk for a few minutes about Ghostbusters official media news. We did it, everybody. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire hit its $200 million box office take. Since the last time we spoke, it was on the brink at like $199 million. And apparently somebody came along and dropped one of those quarters into the coin pusher that pushed the box office right over the edge to 200. And we got a lot of tickets for that. We get to take back the Redemption Center and get cool little spider rings and stuff. None of that is happening, but it is very cool that the movie has managed to hit this sort of big milestone of $200 million globally. And this sort of puts it in league with Ghostbusters in terms of other films. Ghostbusters Afterlife took in $204 million in its box office run. And, believe it or not, as much as people have mixed feelings about it, and some people's feelings are really darkly and deeply mixed, Ghostbusters Answer the Call took $229 million. And arguably there's ways to divvy out what cost what or who cost what or whatever. But the point I want to sort of focus on for a few moments is that I think that this $200 million amount is great, but it also is inconsequential, because the $199 million would have been just as good in terms of Sony and its outlook at pictures that have come out over the last, let's say, 4 or 5 months. And if you were to think about what Sony's sort of game plan is, or in terms of what they are trying to accomplish, they, of course, want to make money. They also want pictures that do well. And if you were to look at the other things that have come out since the beginning of the year, you're really looking at a variety of movies that have struggled to succeed. You're looking at things like the Garfield movie that just took second place on the worst ever performing Memorial Day opening weekend since Casper came out. So that means that the number one movie, which was Furiosa, took even less money in 2024 than Casper did in 1994. And that doesn't account for things like inflation. When you consider what a movie ticket cost in 1994 versus what it costs now in 2024, 30 years later. So Garfield came in second to that. If you look at movies like Madam Web, is not a film that did particularly well. Taro didn't do particularly great. And the things that are forthcoming like Venom and Craven, some folks are already kind of skeptical about, or Bad Boys, Ride or Die. People are questioning whether or not that is a franchise that is kind of over, something that we didn't necessarily need. I'm not saying any of that to be critical of Sony and its business decisions, as much as what I'm saying is that if you were in a boardroom and you had to tell a story of success and what happened in Q1 of 2024 at Sony Pictures, and you had to find a tentpole to raise that story on and hang it, the clear and obvious pole in the pile that's laying around on the floor to pick up would be the one that's marked Ghostbusters, and then to proclaim this pole does indeed still work. There's nothing wrong with it. You can try it for yourself if you'd like, and we should sleep here tonight to try it out. But the point being that, I think that as much as folks are worried about this $200 million mark either being important, or the folks who are kind of looking at it and going, whatever, still the film didn't make enough money. If you look at the Sony Pictures big picture story about this year so far in terms of, movie releases and what has done well versus what has not, this is a success story. And that's something to consider, that if you were thinking about the fact that there are folks suggesting that despite Garfield's poor performance, there are insiders suggesting that its weekend one performance was still adequate to help sort of secure the future of the Garfield franchise. If Ghostbusters is making $200 million over the course of 10 weeks and outperformed Garfield clearly in its first week, then there's no reason to be as concerned, I think, for some people who are being pessimistic. And I'll kind of start moving on from this, and we won't come back to it each week because we don't need to. The movie's leaving theaters. It's at this point in just over 200 theaters, I believe, still at this point. And by next week, it'll probably be in way less, to the point where we'll only be looking at that movie on home video. But I think it's hard at this point to look at the box office release of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, throw your hands up, and call it a failure. Maybe somebody who has more information about how much was spent on marketing would be able to put that in place. But at the moment, we don't really know how much was spent. Anything that we talk about is speculation. So we'll move on from this kind of discussion of the box office take, but congratulations to Sony, and congratulations to Ghost Corps, and congratulations to Gil and Jason and everybody involved on, what is a milestone achievement of earning $200 million in one of the worst performing movie markets that has probably existed in history and has not really rebounded since COVID. If you look at box office numbers across the board right now, they're bad. And it's not just because movies are necessarily good or bad. It's because box office performance across the board is bad. So to be this successful in that context is a total win and a reason to be happy. Okay, so let's talk about one final thing related to Frozen Empire, and then we're going to move on from talking about Frozen Empire for a bit. Adam Savage has one additional featurette that he's done over the Tested channel, talking about the single shot compact proton wand or neutrona wand. So this is a really cool detailed look at that prop, how it's built, discussing its functionality, etc. I don't want to sort of blow the lead on it for you or tell you everything that's in it. So this is something you should go and take a look at for sure over on the Tested YouTube channel. And I'm sure that everybody who watches this, who builds props, is taking detailed notes and measurements as much as they can from screen, because this is without question the most hands-on detailed look at this prop that we've seen for folks to be able to use to replicate it. So definitely cool stuff. Definitely go take a look at it. It's exciting, and I'm totally jazzed that we get a better look at this prop, given that, we didn't really get to see it used much, or to sort of see how it would interact with a typical ghost busting session, given that the only time it got busted out was a situation where the big bad was present and the big bad couldn't be affected by it. So it's kind of cool to see it up close. And other official Ghostbusters media news, Ghostbusters Back in Town issue 3 is coming out today, May 29th. If you're listening to the podcast on the day it's released, if you're listening to it afterwards, then it's already out. Go to your local comic book store and get it. You can take a quick preview of this over on Ghostbusters News, where Jason Fitzsimmons has generously provided some sample pages that he received from Dark Horse. The description that's given on this particular issue is, as tensions rise in the city and in the Spengler family, Phoebe discovers the entity targeting the Ghostbusters, the malevolent Madame Malveaux. On her own and outmatched, Phoebe escapes through the sewers and stumbles into supernatural stand-up. Follow the Ghostbusters official return to New York City with the third installment of this all-new series. Ghostbusters Back in Town features script by David Boer and art by Blue Delaquanti and colors by Chris Peter. So this is, of course, a continuation of the Back in Town series that we've been talking about since David Boer came on the podcast and spoke with us and was a completely generous person who gave us a bunch of his time. And this is an unfolding story. If you have not been taking a look at it, you can grab it from your local comic book store. You can also get it from Dark Horse Digital, I believe, which is another place to get it. So really cool here, cover art. I really like the idea of Phoebe Spengler inside of a haunted comedy club, which appears to be based on the Laugh Factory, based on what I'm looking at here. And she's apparently going to have to tell some jokes to get out of this one, which, you know, by the time we get to Frozen Empire, we know she's still doing. So it's kind of nice to see that this is a running joke about the character still working on telling some jokes. So again, you can grab that from Dark Horse. And one other thing I want to remind you is that when this ends, we know that this is the third or the fourth issue that's coming out from this miniseries. There will be more comic books. I've had this conversation a few times with folks who have asked me like, hey, do you think they're going to announce new comic books? And yeah, they totally are, because David Boer totally did when he was here on Extraplasm. So if you're wondering whether or not we might hear about more comic book stuff for Ghostbusters Day, my money would be, yeah, probably, given that we already know that's something that's planned. So, and I hope that we get to see some great new stories and some great continuation of, outstanding comic work. That would be fantastic. Okay, so one additional piece of Ghostbusters official media news. We'll call this sort of our Ghostbusters video game segment. Rise of the Ghost Lord, the VR game that you can play on MetaQuest and PlayStation systems, is apparently going to be available to all PlayStation Premium members beginning on June 6th. So just 2 days before the 40th anniversary of Ghostbusters. And that's all part of an event that's happening for PlayStation Premium folks, where you can access a variety of different PSVR 2 games. I believe for just a limited amount of time. Those are going to include Walkabout Mini Golf, Synth Riders, Before Your Eyes, and The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, chapters 1 and 2. So 5 VR games available for you for PSVR 2. I don't have one of these, so this doesn't benefit me in any way. to be real, I probably won't run out and buy one so that I can benefit from it. But if you don't have a MetaQuest and you have been skeptical about, checking this out, and you do have PSVR 2, this is something that you can check out. That'll be available on the 6th of June. So go ahead and log in to PlayStation Plus or however it is that you do these things, because I don't have a PlayStation. I won't pretend to have the information on how to do this. If we were talking about Epic Games and PC and Spirits Unleashed, I would totally have your back. But in this case, I don't. That being said, with respect to Spirits Unleashed, I want to remind folks that we are expecting a DLC pack that's supposed to be coming out around the 40th anniversary. So keep your eyes peeled for that, because you're probably looking at that dropping in the next week or two. And that is supposed to have a variety of new Slimer models, which I'm confident that Jason Fitzsimmons and I will spend way too much time offering commentary in terms of their booty qualities. But I digress. If you also want to see another Elphonic game and you want to see Jason Fitzsimmons play it, the Killer Clowns from Outer Space game is out. And he had a live stream that he made yesterday that you can actually find on his YouTube channel that illustrates that game. And I got to say, as much as I'm not like a huge Killer Clowns fan, it's pretty cool. And seeing Jason sort of back at streaming games was pretty neat. So who knows? Maybe we'll try and collaborate on an Extraplasm Ghostbusters News Spirits Unleashed night. Although that might involve me potentially thrashing him, and then he might decide that he doesn't want to do that anymore. But, we'll have to see. Am I talking trash publicly on a podcast? Maybe just a little. But I'm totally excited that, there's going to be this new downloadable content for Spirits Unleashed. And to be real, like, we are so lucky to have been getting as much content as we have for that game, given that it came out, over at this point, almost a year and a half ago, and we've still got free DLC coming that's expanding on that Ghostbusters video game universe. If we're lucky, we might get to talk to somebody who's helped to create that Ghostbusters universe pretty soon. We'll see. Okay, So check out, again, not Spirits Unleashed, because that's not out yet, but do make sure you're taking a look at Rise of the Ghost Lord if you have access to the PS2 or the PSVR 2 system. If you have a PS2 VR, that's got to be pretty damn old. I got to be real. Okay, let's talk about Ghostbusters merchandise news for a minute. And here, we're going to talk about something a little atypical in terms of merch, because I want to talk for a few minutes about Universal Orlando and their summer tribute store. The summer tribute store has been remodeled and set up for this year, and it turns out that we've been hearing a bit about Ghostbusters being a part of Universal this year and kind of potentially being involved in horror nights or other things. And Ghostbusters is definitely getting the royal treatment by Universal Florida in Orlando. They have been given a return to the Universal Studios Florida tribute store where there's actually like big parts of this that are almost like centerpieces. Jason Fitzsimmons over at Ghostbusters News has great still photos of this, illustrating how there is actually like a Gozer's Temple display with 4 Ghostbusters and 2 Terror Dogs that lights up. That's really cool. And there's a variety of different product that's available that's exclusive to Universal, including shirts and plush dolls and things. And then, of course, they have Hasbro stuff too. But there's a whole bunch of stuff in this new setup that includes like a giant Stay Puft cutout, and essentially a celebration of Ghostbusters alongside all these other classics like Back to the Future, Jaws, E.T., these other things that are of the same era. It's so interesting to me that like when we think about the summer tribute store at Orlando, we're actually still paying tribute to things from 40 years ago, and that's what matters to us. I don't know. It's just kind of wild to think about that. That's what is anchoring merchandise in the summer at Universal Orlando. So if you want to take a look at this, you can absolutely go take a look at the still images Jason has. But another location I want to point you to was a really good resource to check out the entire store is that if you go over to the YouTube channel of a travel and theme park vlogger named Kevin Heimbach, Heimbach, you're going to find a 30-minute like tour of just the store. Like it's just like a very detailed stop and look at every single display in the store where you can see every single Ghostbusters item that's available. You can sort of get like a walk through the store, and he even provides like reference images. So there's as for instance, art of Bug-Eye Ghost that's on the walls inside the tribute store. And when he displays it, he actually puts a little picture of the toy next to it so people know what's being referenced. So it's actually really informative, because if you don't know about something that's being referenced in the store, even if it's not Ghostbusters related, this video does a really great job of breaking it down. So the name of this video is Universal Studios New Ghostbusters Tribute Store 2024. And again, the YouTube channel is by Kevin Heimbach. Not much else to talk about in terms of merchandise for this week, which is not entirely surprising given that we are pretty close to the anniversary of Ghostbusters and obviously Ghostbusters Day. And so that means that if we're going to see merchandise, it's probably going to be closer to that day or potentially right after it if it gets announced right on the day, etc. So I'm not really shocked about this, but we'll see. We know there should be some announcements coming from Hasbro, given that they've already told us to expect O-ring figures that'll be announced around Ghostbusters Day, or rather will go for sale because they've already been announced. And we may see some additional announcements that come, given that we just had Ghostbusters at Licensing Expo. So stay tuned for more merchandise news, even though there's not a lot this week, and for more of everything, really, because I imagine we're going to get some pretty cool announcements for Ghostbusters Day, even if we don't know when or where those announcements might happen. We'll see. Potentially in the city of Los Angeles. Who knows? But we're going to go from headlines into talking with Matt and Tom from the Containment Unit. And I just want to remind you that if anything you hear us talking about in this episode appeals to you, head on over to TCU Collectibles on Facebook. Go and search for that, and you will find all of the listings for each of the things that they're talking about. And you can find out how you can get involved in sort of, either buying an autograph from one of the signers who's involved or picking up a piece of artwork from Hank Mayo, etc. So with that being said, and sort of all of that, sort of front loaded disclaimer of where to go and where to look, let's go now to my conversation with Tom Henry and Matt Sanders of TCU Collectibles, aka the Containment Unit Autograph Collecting Group on Facebook. Joining me on Extraplasm Podcast, back for the first time in a while, and the first time since we all saw each other in New York City for the Ghostbusters Frozen Empire premiere. two of my favorite people and whose names are uttered repeatedly on this podcast because of the awesome work they do. Tom Henry and Matt Sanders of TCU Collectibles, aka The Containment Unit, autograph collecting group on Facebook. It's so great to have you both back. We'll kind of go one by one here so you don't talk on top of each other. Tom, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me back, Jim, and thank you for the little bag of nickels. Every time my name is said on Extraplasm, I don't know if your listeners know this, but I get a nickel every time. So that little change purse was welcomed. Thank you.
Wait, who's paying that?
I don't know.
Because I don't get any nickels from anybody.
Oh.
And I know that I'm not paying those nickels. So I want to know like who the entity is that's been sending you nickels, because you may not, the economic source of those nickels may be suspect. What if they're drug nickels?
They're somebody's laundering their nickels, I guess, through the containment unit.
That's it.
Yeah.
Matt, I don't know if you've been receiving nickels. How are you doing?
I don't know what the crap you guys are talking about with these nickels, man. But I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here. And Jim, I echo Tom. We are so thankful for your continued support of what we do. We love being part of the community, and we love helping everybody out, which I know is the heart of what you do as well. So glad to be here.
Thank you for coming back. You've both have done outstanding work in getting tons of private signings done over the time that like Extraplasm has existed, and prior to that as well. And I sing your praises all the time because like you do amazing work, and the stuff that you get done for folks is outstanding. Every piece I have in my collection that came from the containment unit is one that I'm like, oh, it's like a grail piece now, and I love them all. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show. And it's just good to talk to you both. I haven't talked to either of you like since Frozen Empire came out and we walked out of a theater in New York City and kind of all looked at each other bewildered because we'd just been through like 2 days of intense Ghostbusters insanity. How was your trip? Like, how was each of your respective trips to Frozen Empire Land?
This was my first time being part of something like that. And I wasn't able to make it to the Afterlife one. So I really had very little idea of how this stuff would go. But I know I enjoyed seeing so many of our friends that were friends digitally, and be able to meet in person was really cool. And then, like you said, after the movie, it was such a weird feeling because you run hard for like 48 hours before that. And then you see the movie and it's like this big adrenaline dump. And I was tired for a long time, but it was such a great trip. It was such great fun. Again, seeing everybody, being at the firehouse, seeing it all iced up and iced out for Frozen Empire, being on the red carpet. I mean, it's like a dream. It was like a dream come true for this Ghostbusters fan.
I mean, all of what Matt said, but on top of that, it was really apparent how not only how full of how full of Ghostbusters fans New York was, but how small New York really is, because Matt and I were just wandering around and we ran into Jason from Ghostbusters News one day. We ran into Jim and JD in Times Square, a friend of the
all
pod.
Places, the busiest place.
JD Raymer. And then the next morning we ran into Jim and Jason on the subway, and it's like was not planned. It was just
it was
random
weird.
And crazy.
It's just like we all ended up. I mean, granted, we were going to end up at the firehouse together at some point, but like at the point we were just like in Times Square, and it's like, how many thousands of people are there in Times Square? And it was like all the Ghostbusters fans for some reason were like, well, just stay around Times Square and we'll all hang out around the red steps for some reason and have people try and sell us CDs. But like, you're not wrong. Like, it was very small. Very small in the sense that we're a community of people who were in this enormous city and we kept all running into each other. And then of course, like that was going to happen with the places we were going to, but Times Square was definitely the weird one. And the subway was definitely weird too. Like we got on different places.
All the
you got on the same car.
Yeah.
Like it was so strange. Like we literally got on the same subway cars on the same trains at completely different stations and completely different places going in the same direction. Like, so it just means that you have a sense of ectoplasmic magnetism that draws people together, creating community. That's what it must be.
I guess, because we did not see you on that subway until we were on that subway. And we were like, wait, what? It's unreal.
It was so weird. It was cool though. You know, we should have got autographs from everybody in that subway car. and we should have put them on a print of us.
We're waiting to hear back from each of them. We've approached them with a financial deal that they should not decline.
Nickels.
Nickels, yeah.
Nickels. That's where whoever's paying
we
the
deal
bags
exclusively in nickels.
Yeah. God, well, if you go back in time, we'll be able to buy some sodas. That'll be great. Well, I wanted to have you on the show, not just to be like, let's reminisce about our premiere experiences, but also because you have a ton of stuff going on. And I believe the last time you were doing this, I coined the phrase "Busters Across California" 2023 or something. And you're doing it again. Like, you're about to embark on the trip all the way out to the West Coast from, well, for one of you's already on the West Coast, so just down the West Coast. But Matt, you have to actually travel across an entire country to get where you're going. And you're coming out here towards the LA area. And well, I mean, I won't kind of ruin it for you. What are you doing? Why are you coming out here?
So it seems like our model lately has been to have one big trip every year where we try to get as many signers together to happen at the same time. Because ultimately what that does is it saves everybody a little bit of money. It makes Tom and my life a little easier from an organizational standpoint, because instead of having 5-6 different signings throughout the year, it's all kind of in one shot. I guess it doesn't save us much work, but it creates less stress throughout the year. It's kind of just a concentrated amount of stress all at once. But so we were coming back to LA. Don't call it a comeback. Or Jim, you already dubbed it something, didn't you?
Busters Across California. That's what
yeah,
I named
I thought you
it.
had a new name for 2024.
Did I? I might have called, I don't know if I said this one, but I said at one point it was like Busters Across California 2 Electric Boogaloo, but that's just even longer than Busters Across California. It just rips things off of like House Party or something. Or what is it? It's not House Party. What is that? That's
Busters Across California 2, Frozen Empire.
No, it's Busters Across California 2, Cruel Summer.
That's how it feels sometimes.
Well, that's the compressed pressure, right? That's that whole taking a year's worth of signings and trying to compress them down as your own designated cruel summer that you're doing. But it's not cruel. It's cool from my standpoint. Everything you're doing is awesome. It would be cruel if you came all the way out here and you brought everybody's stuff to get signed, and then you just took photos of you hanging out with the signers, and then you were like, by the way, nothing's getting signed. We're just hanging out. Like, that would be cruel, but you're not going to do that. Busters Across California 2 is a possible name. We could probably come up with others, like TCU Returns, The Signings. Like, that sounds like some sort of, horror movie oriented version of it, but
TC2.
I'm going to leave it up to you guys. Yeah. You guys can workshop it. You're the creative ones here.
Yeah. Actually, this is like the 4th year we've done this, so.
So maybe not call it 2?
If only there was a 4th Ghostbusters movie with a subtitle that we could borrow.
I mean, you can probably come up with one. Well, when you come out here, you're going to get a lot done, which is part of what we're going to talk about, is all the great stuff you have going on. Because I've talked about it over the last few weeks on the podcast, that you have things going on with like Hank Mayo and with like William Atherton and now with Kevin Mangold. And like, there's so much you're doing that I don't even think I've kept track of all of it. Last week when I finished talking about it, I had to stop and then be like, go look and make sure I hadn't missed anything. And I'm still not sure that I didn't. So we can kind of talk about this a bit and sort of talk about who you are coming out here to see, what you're hoping to get done, and what's exciting about that. So let's get into it. Who are you coming out here to see?
I think the place that we should start is Stuart Ziff. Stuart was the ghost shop supervisor on the original Ghostbusters, working for Boss Film. He has not signed an autograph since the early 2000s. It's been over 20 years. He is also pretty well known for his work on Star Wars. He worked on all 3 of the original films. Specifically, he had a lot of contributions in Return of the Jedi. That's where he did the bulk of his work, but also on Star Wars and A New Hope. It's taken us probably about a year and a half, maybe 2 years to get to the point where we can offer him. We were at his house last summer. We went and spent some time with him. He made us chili, which was the chili that won the Boss Film chili cook-off. And we really built that relationship with Stu. We got to know him, and he got to know us, and he felt comfortable with us being his first signing. And he goes on a lot of Ghostbusters 84 projects that we've had in the works for over 5 years almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was laughing because Jim, you were joking about us taking pictures with signers but not getting anything signed. That's exactly what we did last year with Stuart Ziff. And we posted the pictures in our group, and everyone's like, "Oh, please tell us there's a signing." But we hadn't yet gotten that full commitment yet. And so hopefully this year we'll be visiting Stuart Ziff, or the plan is at least that we'll be visiting Stuart Ziff. We'll take our pictures with Stuart Ziff and get all your stuff signed this time around. So we are really looking forward to that.
Do the signings you're offering with Stuart Ziff come with a chili recipe card that you can add to your cookbooks? Is that a thing? And if not, will you now be offering that, because that's an amazing idea I just had in the moment?
Well, to be honest, and I think he would be okay with me saying this, he already shared that recipe, and we have actually made it here at TCU HQ. We didn't quite hit the high bar that he set, but it was in the same neighborhood.
Got it.
Yeah,
So maybe signed recipe cards would be a good idea.
What Tom and I have learned as we've been working with all these signers, and we talk about it a little bit in our podcast, depending on who we're interviewing at the time, but I say it's a joke, but it's not a joke, is in 84 or 83 when they were working on the film, they would be working hard, and I think it was like every Friday they would have a chili cook-off. Like somebody else would make chili, and apparently Richard Edlund was super competitive with it. So many other cast and crew members were participating in this, and Stu had his own take on the chili. Tom, I can't remember what the kind of chili it is that he says it is, but it's a very different type of chili. And so they all took their chili game very seriously. And so we did joke about putting together a TCU cookbook with everybody's recipes in it at some point.
If you do, you also need to have at least one area of that cookbook in which you can fit a particular recipe for outstanding avocado toast. I just want to remind you that that's like, you have had multiple culinary experiences with the people with whom you sign, whether it was eating with them or having them cook for you. Nobody else gets to do that, by the way. There's nobody else who's going to be like, hey, yeah, I've got a Ghostbusters franchise, and that's why I've eaten chili made by somebody who also made Ghostbusters. And you're like, got it.
It was one of those things where Tom and I both, like, obviously we only do this because we're fans. Yeah. And it was one of those, we left Stu's house that day, and it was a pinch ourselves, like, I can't believe that this just happened. Because it wasn't even just chili, Tom. You remember? He made ice cream, or his wife made ice cream for us. Like, it was this whole thing that's like, I can't believe that we just hung out with Stu, had chili, ice cream, took a tour of his workshop. Like, it really was a pinch ourselves type thing.
And then he did an interview with you, right? And this is like, we're coming up almost on like the 1 year anniversary of that, because that was like their June 1st episode, which I believe may have been one of your last episodes of the podcast before you kind of went on hiatus. But we'll talk about whether or not that's coming back. I don't know if we're going to have to compete with you all, and now we're going to have to like war over nickels. But you all had that interview, and it was really amazing. I think people should definitely go out and get it and download it and listen to it, even though I am suggesting that people go listen to a competing piece of Ghostbusters audio, which no one should ever do. It's not like I ever talk about Yes Have Some or their cross rip on the show as good things. But what were some of your favorite things about that? That opportunity of getting to talk to Stu?
Stu's house is kind of like a mixture of Doc Brown's lab plus the dad from the Gremlins. He has like hydraulics, and he has neon lights that he made, and he has little gadgets. There's parts of his kitchen that have motors, and they rise up and they lower, and it's really amazing. And his house, he has a book that he published, self-published, called Dog Art, and it's all of the things that his dog has chewed and destroyed. They take photos and they're in a book. And
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, and Matt was talking about the chili, and it's like, and you were mentioning, hey, nobody gets to do that, but moments before we had the chili, he let us hold Admiral Akbar's eye, and if you go look at the photos in the group, there's a photo of Stu covered in plaster. They're making the mold for the head appliance for Neenum, so that was built off of Stuart, and these are characters that we've known our whole lives, and we got to have a moment with a little piece of it, and then have chili by the guy who made it. Crazy.
That's pretty amazing. I mean, that you stack that against, your anecdotes about visiting Ernie Hudson and eating avocado toast at his house. And it's like, every time you guys tell me these stories, I'm like, can I come hang out with you? Like, can I road trip and just be like, I don't know, I'll just be like the caddy. I'll carry all the markers in a bag. And when you're like, we need like the Sharpie green glow pen, I'll grab it and I'll give it to you. And if it's the wrong pen to use, I'll try to give you some advice, and I'll totally be wrong because you know way more about signing than I do. But like, if you ever need a marker caddy, just let me know. I'll come and I'll just bring a big bag of them. But I think that like, it's so cool that you have these experiences. And I have listened to that episode with Stuart Ziff and with Mark Brian Wilson, because it's like a dual interview with the two of them. And it's outstanding. And so I really do want to suggest, like, beyond the cool stories here about chili, if you want to hear, a really cool interview, with Stuart and Mark Brian Wilson, who of course performed and played as Slimer, like, it's an outstanding interview to go check out on the Ghostbusters Containment Unit podcast, which is, of course, over on all the good places that you can find podcasts that Extraplasm's on. But who else are you going to see? You're going to see Stuart Ziff. Who else is sort of on the slate here for you to go and eat their food if they cook it for you?
Well, for one, we're going to see Mark. You mentioned Mark Brian Wilson there in our interview with Stu. Mark's kind of like our consultant. He works with us and helps connect us with some of his old friends. And not only is he a legend in his own right, but we count him among friends and TCU help, and he's a wealth of knowledge. So that interview is really special because he brings his own insights to it, being there in the production from day one. So definitely gonna see our pal Mark and some others as well, Matt.
Yeah, we'll just keep going on the Slimer train here. So we're friends with Mark, and we are going to now hang out, spend a little time with Kevin Mangold, who, Jim, your interview with Kevin was amazing.
Thank you.
Spoiler alert, we've since been able to interview Kevin, and he's just such a fun guy and such an easy conversation. And so we are excited to meet him. I haven't had that chance yet. Jim, we know you got to meet him at the comic book shop, but and he speaks so highly of you, but we're going to be working to get everyone's Frozen Empire stuff signed by Kevin Mangold, who was Slimer. He was a puppeteer for the Librarian Ghost, and he kind of indicated that he was a little bit all over the place on set. So he seemed to really be a fan of being there.
Yeah, I have to say that I really loved my conversation with Kevin Mangold. It's one of my favorite interviews that I've had the opportunity to have on Extraplasm, and I'm so glad that you are actually doing a signing with him, because when we talked off air, I actually was like, hey, you need to talk to the guys from the containment unit, because like they will set up awesome signings. And if you hear from them, like they're totally legit and totally great people. And so to know that not only are you doing a signing with him, but also that you had him on to do an interview, I think is fantastic. And you're right. Like, I think he has a real deep appreciation for Ghostbusters fandom, even though in some ways he's like sort of coming into it as a newbie. Like he's a longtime fan of Ghostbusters, but his understanding of like our deep level wacky fandom stuff is very new, but he's like embraced it and really sort of fallen in love with it. And I think it's very cool. So I'm stoked that he's going to be doing signings. And for anybody out there who's got like existing Slimer projects or stuff, or you have stuff where you now want to complete, all your Slimer stuff, you got one more person to put on there, because I mean, let's be real. He ate an entire pizza inside the suit. He'll like forever. Like he is now just won an award in my mind. Mark Brian Wilson will always be the first Slimer, but Kevin Mangold is the Slimer that took an entire pizza to the face, for justice.
And we have those images. I went frame by frame through that pizza scene, and I got the best possible pizza shots that are out there. So you want your pizza Slimer shots, you got them.
And I want to remind people that pizza is 100% practical.
Yeah. And along with that, we have Raygun just submitted his cards that we're going to offer for the signing, and Pinbackers, who's our friend JD. The cards are so great that they've done for these guys. So there's just so many cool things that you can have Kevin sign.
Man, I got to mention the special card because Jim's going to love it.
Oh,
Jim.
yeah. And Jason's going to love it too.
I know. We have a card, a ray gun card, and it's a shot of Kevin in the suit. But the suit is facing the back of the suit is facing the camera, and he's talking to Jason Reitman. And it says behind in quotes the scenes. And we have a Slimer's Butt ray gun card, limited edition.
That's amazing.
It's so good, man.
So I think people getting signatures from Kevin are going to be really happy. I have several, and like he is really cool about like personalizing and like wanting people to have a good experience. And like even when I'm like, this is kind of funny, but I mailed him some stuff. He was looking for some Slimer collectibles that he and Aryan 210 were trying to collect together. And so I had some extras and sent them. Kevin sent me back like 3 autographs. And he was just like, here's a poster, here's an 8x10. And each of them customized, each of them with a message on it, like super kind and super awesome. And I think it's like really cool that he's doing a signing with you all. So if people out there listening, like I have to say, go get Kevin's autograph, like get all of these, but like without question, if you need a Frozen Empire actor's signature, like this is the one I want you to get.
And he's got a beautiful signature as well. You can read almost pretty much every letter. It's so legible. It's nice. And you kind of love to see it. We kind of joke like Finn Wolfhard's, whatever that is considered, you know, like that's kind of what's becoming normal. And so when you have someone like Kevin who takes their time and signs so beautifully, you got to get it.
Yeah, it's like I say, Ernie Hudson paints his signature onto every piece that he does. Like you can see an Ernie Hudson, and if you watch him do it, he's like meticulous in the way he does it. And Kevin's very much like the same way that you get a piece that really looks beautiful, as opposed to like, and this is nothing against Finn, right? But it's like, yeah, Finn Wolfhard has a squiggle.
Yeah. And like, not to get totally off topic here, but I mean that we're seeing that with McKenna. We're starting to see it with just the thing is they get older and they're doing more of these things. The signature quality just goes down. And so when I say that only because when you have someone like Kevin and you see that quality, like you want to jump on that because it really is. It is almost like a little piece of art. You had mentioned Ernie painting. It is very much kind of like that.
Beyond seeing Stu and beyond seeing Kevin, I believe that you are maybe seeing someone else who is sort of a more classic alum of the Ghostbusters franchise and who's been around for almost the whole 40 years in a sense. Because who else are you seeing?
That's right. We're seeing our friend William Atherton. We saw him last summer as well. The thing about that is shortly before we saw him, photos of him from the set of Frozen Empire leaked onto the internet. So very, very short turnaround. We had the Firehouse image that was from Ectofest, and then we had like the paparazzi image. And he couldn't talk about it. He was still technically in the middle of shooting when we saw him. But he couldn't talk about it, and he didn't want to sign the paparazzi shot, which I totally understand. So this is really his first, or anybody's first opportunity to have him on Frozen Empire items because he didn't sign at the premiere even. So this is one of his only private signings. It's not like he's very accessible and he doesn't do cons. So to celebrate the 40th anniversary of not only the franchise, but the 40th anniversary of Walter Peck and him becoming mayor, we put together a couple pretty special items for him. We have a limited edition, only 40 are going to be printed. It's a Mayor Peck campaign poster designed by our friend Eric Christensen.
This thing is awesome. I've seen it.
Right? It's super cool. It's kind of inspired by the Obama Hope design.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, Jim, you'll remember these, but for the Frozen Empire premiere in New York, we made Vote Peck buttons. Vote Peck for mayor buttons, because I just had a hunch that something was going to be happening. And we handed those out, but we had about 10 left over. So we're offering those as well if anybody wants one signed by Bill.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's great that you have him involved because, I think that in some senses, like you don't really get to see him out in the world as much doing cons and things like that. It's not really his wheelhouse. And in fact, like some of us joke about the experiences of being at FanFest and interacting with him and the difference between interacting with him one-on-one versus like in a group photo setting. He's really more personable in a one-on-one setting and sort of more into that sort of intimate interaction, I think. And so I think that it's hard to get his signature as a result because he doesn't really put himself in a lot of those dense convention contexts. So like if you're out there and you don't have a William Atherton in your collection, like this is absolutely an opportunity that I would take up to go grab one because I don't know when he'll do it again.
Yeah.
It's something, and to be real, like, I don't know, like if we get a next Ghostbusters movie, will he necessarily be in it? You know, like, will he still be the mayor? Or will, you know, Winston Zedmore engineer some other candidate to come in and like back him financially to get rid of him? Right? Like, how does he stay? Is he necessarily still in the mayor's office 4 years from now in another Ghostbusters movie such that he's still around the franchise? Or is this sort of a opportunity to come back and celebrate that 40th anniversary in a more subtle way? So I definitely think it's somebody who people should get for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And not to, you know, not to put too fine a point on it, but you know, when I needed him prior to Ghostbusters Fan Fest, I had to go through his manager to get him. He just doesn't do cons. He never really has. And yeah, he did do Fan Fest. But I think, you know, you mentioned him in a group setting versus individual and one-on-one. I noticed for Frozen Empire, he was there at the premiere, but he didn't do a ton of press, if any. I didn't see any interviews with him. And he also, when he got in to the theater and he saw all of us in the fan pen, you know, it was a pretty stunned reaction. I don't think he was ready to see us. And then he just kind of went into the theater. So, you know, getting him any other way on those big items, cast items, posters, stuff like that, these are really early opportunities. And I'm not saying that Bill has never done a signing besides us, but I've never seen him do a private signing besides us.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and Jason and I obviously were at the top of the carpet talking to folks coming into the premiere, and we didn't even like see him. Like, he managed to just like cruise right past us. And if you notice, like, all the footage that got caught of people coming in to the movie, like, he's not in it. I don't know how he ended up kind of getting into the fray and kind of just, you know, kind of working through it and just kind of cruising by folks. But yeah, you're not wrong. I kind of get the impression that it's just like kind of not his bag, you know, to kind of be in that compressed convention environment. I don't know. I could have him on the podcast someday, maybe, and ask him. That would be cool. And be like, dude, why'd you put words in my mouth? And I'm like, I'm sorry. I think that the opportunity that folks should take up for sure is to get yourself a William Atherton autograph, because I don't know when you're going to get another one. And, you know, we'll see if he's still around the franchise. It's cool they brought him back after 40 years, but I don't know that he'll be around for Ghostbusters Ectoplasmic Excess, the next movie that's coming out. Not that I would think it was excessive. I love Ghostbusters. But you've talked about William Atherton. You've talked about Kevin. You talked about Stu. Who else are you coming out here to see?
Well, Tom, I can take this one. We will be seeing our friend Hank Mayo. And Hank was concept artist for Ghostbusters 2. He's worked on a ton of other things as a storyboard artist, an artist for Disney, ILM, so many. He has done comic books. I mean, this is a guy who, you know, his art, you just don't know it's him. And so we're doing a couple things, really. We've opened up an opportunity where Hank is doing new sketches of Ghostbusters 2 stuff that it resembles the concept art, but it's not. So he's having fun with it. So yes, he's doing Scoleri Brother Ghost. He's doing some of his Slimer sketches from Ghostbusters 2, but then he's having fun with it where he's combining the ghosts in different ways. He did a piece that he posted of so many of the ghosts. I think it was the Terror Tub. Or maybe, I can't even remember, but it was Sigourney Weaver as Dana in a flight suit. So he's just having so much fun with this art, and it's going to be amazing pieces. And so we've opened it up where for $300, you can have Hank do a concept piece for you. And then whatever those who pay ahead of time, they'll get first priority, and then whatever's left over will open up to the group as well. But he's also going to do a signing. So if there are photos or items from Ghostbusters 2, again, JD from Pinbackers, who's also one of our moderators in our group, and Raygun, they've made cards for Hank as well. So there's plenty of things for him to sign. He's just one of those guys that if you were around and living in 1989, anything that was connected to the film from a promotional standpoint was Hank's art. And so just a really cool opportunity to get kind of an unsung hero for the development of that film.
You have a slideshow of some of the images that he's done so far that you put over on the TCU Collectibles Facebook page. And it has one of my favorite things that I've seen him do so far in it. And it is that he did concept art of the Scolaries alive and dead. So like he has literal like concept art of what like Tony and Nunzio looked like when they were alive, and they look like New York gangsters or something who like, it's kind of funny. Like they look like almost like guys from the 1940s who were like living in New York City and would have been out like playing card games, but also, I don't know, running molasses over the border or something. Maybe they're like during Prohibition. I don't know. Like, but it's kind of funny. Like, I never would have conceptualized that as something that you would get. And in like the photo and the drawing he's done, like they're holding a handgun. Like you get this sensation that they are bad guys. And then you have the ghosts right above them. And I was like, God, this is an amazing piece. Like I wish he would do this as a print. Cause then I would like, cause I know it's going to be a one-off that all these pieces he's doing are like individual sketches he's doing for folks. So one person's going to get that art. And whoever's getting it, I'm going to like rob their house. But like, you're not wrong. Like he's having so much fun with these pieces where he's done like the bathtub ghost, but he's doing like new images of the bathtub ghost with like, the baby being thrown out of it as it transforms and stuff. And like, there's just so much fun and joy in these pieces that I was really stunned to kind of see him revisit this stuff from 35 years ago and still have such a joy for what he's drawing that's like coming out of the work. And so if you haven't seen these images yet, go over to TCU Collectibles because they're amazing. And as much as like $300 is a price tag for something that you might go, whoa, like it's an original piece of art that is from the concept artist who was coming up with what these characters should look like and who's continuing to come up with ideas on it that I think is so neat.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Tom and I have talked about it, that I know the sticker shock might be there for a few people, but I really do think it's not only a great addition to your collection, but I think it's a great investment. It's one of those things that years down the road, people are going to be bummed that they didn't get in on, and that they missed out on. And I think these are those things that will just gain value and be something that are really cherished by a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that I want to get them and like frame them. Like at first I was like, oh, I don't know what that'll be like. It'll be some sketches. Like maybe it'll just be like kind of remarks on things. I don't know what he'll be doing with this.
Yeah, that's what we thought.
Right. Like, I mean, to see how much work and effort he's putting into each of these individual pieces, it's really amazing. It's like having somebody who's a professional concept artist who's worked on all these amazing things that, we've loved. And who had such a principal involvement in Ghostbusters 2 in terms of design, really create some stunning work that I'm really mad that I haven't bought.
I'll tell you what's fun too. If you look at some of them, he's having fun with this idea of mini Vigos. So we got mini puffs in the new films, obviously. And so he's toying with this idea of mini Vigos. And so you'll see it in some of the stuff that he's posted where there's these miniature Vigo the Carpathians running around, and it's just so much fun. And so the way it works is you select a ghost. It's one of the Scoleri brothers. It's Slimer, Terror Tub, and the theater ghost. And he's just having fun. He's doing 5 of each ghost. And it's first come, first served. So I can unfortunately let you know that the one that you've talked about with the Scaleris is not mine because I requested a Slimer. But the person who owns it or will own it will be very proud to have it.
Well, I can fortunately let you know that I won't be robbing your house. So, but you are now like pointing at the other window here, suggesting that perhaps I need to rob Tom. So Tom, watch out, because it may mean I have to come by your house and rob your house.
Yeah, I had to request both Scaleris from Hank because I had to one-up Matt because he has an amazing full color. I think is it Tony Scoleri?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's got a little full color Scoleri original, so I had to one up him and get both on there. So he probably has like full color Slimer flying out of the Statue of Liberty with little mini Vigos parading around it.
Truthfully, I don't know. We will see here in June, but yeah, it's just a really exciting opportunity. It's just one of those things that you're not going to get anywhere else. I kind of just laugh that we are the ones who have the opportunity to bring this to fans and collectors. And so it's just really cool.
It's amazing. I am seriously impressed by the work he's doing with it. Well, I'm excited about all these opportunities that you're creating for folks. I'm always excited about them. And it's like part of why I have you on is not to just be like, welcome to the Ghost Shopping Network. I'm going to do an episode where we do nothing but talk about things you should buy. But like, I mean this genuinely, that you are two awesome folks who are great fans who have a lot of, care and concern for folks in terms of their autographs. And you are passionate about this. Like you've said this over the years, that the whole reason you do any of this is because you have signatures that you need. as fans, right? And it's kind of like what motivates and drives you to do this so much. So let's talk about just real quick, like what's the most exciting thing for you, do you think, about this trip? Like coming back out from the last LA trip, like what are you each most excited about?
So for me, it's different. I think there's a couple things. Tom and I have talked about how just the industry has changed since we began. That when we began, we were filling a need. And now, because the great news is that Ghostbusters is a thriving franchise again. The downside, at least for us from a private signing standpoint, is that everyone's available at cons, which makes doing these just more challenging and more difficult. And there's minimums and agents now, and it's just becoming more challenging than it used to be. And so Tom and I have been teasing that this is kind of us, our last big hurrah for a while before we set off into our golden years and take a step back and rest a little bit, and kind of reset. Like we just want to get everything out to everybody, let them enjoy their pieces. And in some ways, it's kind of like our kids are grown up and they don't need us as much anymore. So that's kind of a weird place that we're at. So 5 years into this now, and we're going on this trip. We're getting names that we've been fighting for the last 5 years. And we're really excited about that. And so I'm excited about this trip for that reason. But the other one that's really cool is I'll have my son with me. And so on a personal level, he's about to turn 16. And so he's never been on an airplane, let alone the West Coast. And so he's coming to tag along, and we're going to have some fun before the signings, and then certainly during along the way as well. So I'm just really excited for those things. I'm really excited to celebrate what Tom and I have done over the last 5 years, and we're not stopping. We're not retiring, but we are kind of moving into a new season. And this is kind of, for me, it's the celebration of that.
That's awesome. I was thinking, though, there are some folks in the Containment Unit Facebook group who are clinging to their iToyas and listening to you and going, but Matt, this is how I want to spend my golden years. So it's good to know that you won't be going away as much as you're just sort of thinking about what this looks like for the future, and sort of how it transitions and changes in a way that works well for you both. Tom, how about you?
Well, it's kind of a three-pronged kind of problem that we encounter going forward. I mean, number one, Matt's 100% right. You're seeing more and more people doing cons. People are joking now about McKenna Grace doing cons, when announcements being teased, like, oh, it's going to be McKenna again. And there was a moment where she was the Bill Murray of the franchise because we couldn't get her. We had no access to her.
Yeah, I actually had that as a nickname at one point in the show, and I said it was unfair to her, and I stopped calling her Tiny Girl Bill Murray. Yeah.
But on top of that, you have Paul Rudd doing a signing. And Paul Rudd's doing this big private signing. And I'm not saying that this is going to happen in this case, but this is just an example. There can be times where the orders close for a signing in March, and they expect that signing to happen in June. But if it doesn't, if Paul Rudd's schedule shifts and that signing doesn't happen until December or next February, all those items that are sent in, all those Frozen Empire posters are just sitting in a warehouse somewhere, waiting for Paul Rudd. That means that if we were to offer somebody from Frozen Empire and all those items are there, it's really going to be hard for us to hit a minimum. So it's with more opportunity, it becomes harder to just coordinate all that. But I think the thing that is probably most important about the golden years and kind of us moving into a new season is that we've done over 50 private signings in 5 years. We've offered almost everyone who is still with us that worked on Ghostbusters 1 and Ghostbusters 2 that is interested in signing. Now, that doesn't mean we've offered everyone, but it's everyone that we've been able to offer. There are names that have declined us. There are names that are out of our price range. And there are people that we haven't been able to talk to because we can't get a hold of them. But to have 50 private signings from one franchise between two guys over 5 years, there's not much left for us to do, unless we start looking forward. But again, there's problems with that.
I was just going to say, it's one of those things where, like, as much as people would love for us to do a signing with someone like a Rick Moranis or a Sigourney Weaver, the reality is the what it would take to make that happen is well beyond what we can do, especially on our own. And so, like, it's not realistic. And so, and like Tom said, we've offered so many people. However, there are still so many other people that we can't offer. And it's like we joke about all the time, but we're not joking. Is like we're going to send the projects out that we've been working on for 4 years to everybody after this summer at some point. And there are still names to add. And as long as there are names to add, you can guarantee that I'll be researching and figuring out how to add them to my piece. And of course, we're going to offer it to everyone when we can. So we're not done. But I think the days of us trying to do big signings and stuff like that, it's not going to stop. We're always going to do what makes sense for us and for the group. But it's times are different. The needs are different, and so we're just trying to adjust with the times.
Well, and I think too, like it's important to consider that like part of what you were able to execute was that you had a period of time where a lot of folks in the entertainment industry were kind of put out, like because whether it was COVID and us all being sort of locked at home, and then even when we weren't, the number of just like tightly closed productions and like micromanaged productions because of all the COVID safety compliance and stuff like meant that you had folks who were at home and not working and who were more accessible for things. And then kind of the same thing happened last year with the strikes. Like you had folks who were around who might have been more accessible at that time. And so now in a weird way, like the industry is rebounding and thriving post COVID. So it makes it kind of harder for you to catch people who have downtime or who have the sort of investment in doing it as commonly, you know? So I think we'll see where it goes forward, but like, I'm glad you're not going away because I think you do great work. But I think it makes sense for you to evaluate what you're doing, you know?
And it's interesting that you mentioned kind of the strike and COVID. I mean, COVID is why we started because all the cons were canceled. We wanted to help not only the fans, but we also wanted to help the talent who no longer had those con opportunities. And so that really gave us a window. But it's funny you mentioned the strike because last summer we pushed real hard on a lot of those names that we haven't offered that people need or people want. And we spoke to a couple managers and nothing came of it, any of them. And, you know, some of the numbers that were being thrown at us for some of these names, you know, they would turn you white, as Winston would say. And it shows us that, you know, management and agents and such, they are not aligned with, hey, these fans want to celebrate something that they love. They don't care. They just care about the almighty dollar. And if you can't hit that target, it's like you're not even going to be in the conversation. And that doesn't mean that somebody else won't offer it. But you know, we've always just been two guys trying to help other fans like us,
right?
And we want to kind of get back to that where it feels like a manageable for two guys.
Yeah, I think what I'm saying is that sometimes crap happens. Someone has to deal with it. And who are you going to call? We'll be there. TCU will be ready. But you know, just this season, it'll look different. So anyway, I say all that to say, not to be a downer and all negative Nelly over here. But I think for me, this trip in June is a little extra special and a little sentimental because it's the kind of an end of a chapter and it's the beginning of a new one.
So to wrap up this conversation, and I thank you both for coming on and chatting with us, I wanted to ask you, you know, we're just a few days away from the 40th anniversary of Ghostbusters. You've both been fans like your whole lives. For me, I've been a fan as long as the movie's existed, and I'm as old as the movie and a little bit older, so I feel like I'm celebrating my own bit of an anniversary of fandom. What are you most excited about? Like, what's the thing you're most jazzed about with the 40th anniversary, or what are you hoping for?
Yeah, like you said, the 40th is a big year. I turned 40 this year. My favorite film franchise turns 40 this year. I just hope that it keeps moving on. Like, I hope that it continues. There are certainly more stories to tell. I think one of the things I loved about Frozen Empire is that it opens us up now to this whole new world and all these new adventures in Ghostbusters storytelling. And I'm here for it. So I'm excited for whatever announcements they may make about the future. The comic book it's whatever. But there's been conversations about the Netflix series or more movies. Like, I'm here for it. Like, I want this franchise to continue on.
You know, it's hard to want more in a movie year, right? Because we got Frozen Empire, and for us, the three of us talking right now, we got to go to that premiere. That was pretty dang special. But honestly, I wanted more merchandise, I thought, from the 40th anniversary, and I really wanted the studio to care about the anniversary, at least even a little bit. We got a big event for the 35th that was pretty awesome, but also underwhelming. It would have been nice to see something like that happen, which is a weird thing to be disappointed about not happening. But they've done it so many times in the past where they invite the fans, so it was kind of shocking to not see a 40th anniversary. But I think that this year has been amazing for us already because we got that movie and we got to see our heroes back in the way that, it was great to see them at the end of Afterlife, right? But you got to see them like as if it was just another episode of Ghostbusters. You got to see them doing their thing, and to see that 40 years later, to be able to see that still, I think is pretty special.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's one of my favorite things about Frozen Empire is that sense that you get to feel that it is just an episode in an ongoing set of Ghostbusters stories. And so I'm hopeful that we are going to get some really cool announcements for Ghostbusters Day about things that are happening. I don't think anybody's greenlighting a new movie in 10 days or so, or whatever it is by the time people listen to the podcast. But, it did just hit 200 million. So maybe we'll see. Maybe that was the checkpoint that scratches that off the list, and now they can announce one. I'm just kidding. But I think that it's interesting to kind of consider how many of us are just kind of grateful that after 40 years, we're still getting stories, and that we're very hopeful that we're going to continue to get some more. And so hopefully we'll get some good announcements. Any final words you want to leave people with this week from your quick stop by the Extraplasm podcast studios?
I'm just grateful for the opportunity to catch up and connect, Jim. I, of course, look forward to seeing you in LA at some point. We got to make it happen once our schedule falls in the order here. And, part of the reason why I want more movies and more things is because I want more trips like we had for Frozen Empire, so we can all hang out in big cities and just serendipitously run into each other. So that, that's the stuff I'm here for. And while we love the movies, what I've come to really love is the friends that we meet along the way. And so, Jim, you're one of them. So I'm thankful for you. Thankful for our time together. And I just hope for more.
I agree, and I want to say that I also consider you both friends. And like I said, need a marker caddy. I'm here. I'm already in LA. I can go to Michael's right now. I can just leave the house. I can get a teacher discount there. If you want to get some cheap markers, it'll be good. Tom, any final words you want to leave folks with?
Matt did a bang up job there. I'll just add that, we have several really great signings right now that are open. Listening to this, if you're listening the day this drops, they are still open. The deadline is June 21st. And not to press a sales pitch, but we generally can't go back and get people again. So when we have them, that's usually the one opportunity that we have. And a lot of these people don't sign elsewhere. So, get in while you can. Again, June 21st is that deadline. And all those signings are going to be happening at the end of June. So it won't be too much of a wait after that.
And I'm going to throw in there real quick for folks. If you're wondering, how do I get in touch? How do I make this happen? You want to go over to the Facebook page, TCU Collectibles, and you'll find a pinned post for each of these signings. And the details for who you need to contact for each of those signings are in it. So for some of them, it's going to be Ghostbusters autographs at gmail.com. For some of them, it's going to be slime signatures at gmail.com. Those are Tom and Matt, or Matt and Tom. I'm not sure who has which account, and you don't have to divulge it because it adds to the mystery. But realistically, if you're looking to be how do I get this done? How do I get these signings accomplished? Because we didn't talk about it until the very end of the episode somehow. You want to go over to the TCU Collectibles Facebook page to take a look at the listings for each of these to get the details. And the other reason to do that is that's where you're going to see all the 8x10s that you can check out, all the different art that Hank's sort of produced so far, or and seen if you want to get examples of what a Hank Mayo piece looks like, etc. And so those options are all out there. Go and take a look at them. Matt and Tom, I want to say I consider you both great friends, and one of my things I was bummed about in terms of going to New York was that I wasn't going to get to see the two of you because I know that you're not coming to New York for the event for Ghostbusters Day. But I get to have a bonus time of seeing you here in LA at the end of June, which I'm holding you to and I'm excited about. And we should have some awesome pizza and, get together and hang out. So
pizza is my love language. I know it is yours too. So I look forward to that.
Yeah.
You bring the sourdough and I'll bring the paint pens.
All right. Well, I thought I was going to be the caddy though. Can I not have this job? I can be a pizza man and a caddy. I can do double duty. I can bring one of those uni pizza ovens on the go. I can bake while you sign. It'll be great.
Warm bread helps signers sign. All right,
Yes.
so we just need warm breads, and then you can join and be our caddy. That's how it is, Jim.
Who knew that the way to every signer's heart is just more carbs? That's all you need. Oh, thank you both for coming on the show.
Of course.
I appreciate you taking the time to come on, and we hope to talk to you again real soon. That about wraps things up for Extraplasm this week. I want to say one final thank you to Tom and Matt for coming on the show and for being gracious with their time and letting us know about what's happening. I can't stress enough that there's a limited window to get involved in the signings that they have out there, and that you totally should. I say this not just because Matt and Tom are friends, but because I have virtually every cool autograph I have in my collection, with exception of the handful that I've probably picked up on eBay that I then question their authenticity. I have gotten either directly from a signer or from Matt and Tom, and often the ones I get from Matt and Tom are better because they have the time to engage the signers privately and to get things done in a way that isn't, sort of handing things off in a crowd, etc. So I want to stress this, like if you're an autograph collector and you don't already have things from the containment unit, you should get your first thing from the containment unit. And if you already get stuff from the containment unit, you should totally go over it and figure out what you're going to get to add to your collection, because they do great work and the signers involved for this round of stuff are outstanding. Beyond that, I want to say thank you as usual to Brendan Pearce of Badoochi Studios, who provides the logo and the visual identity for Extraplasm. And I want to say thank you as always to vaporwave artist MAGNAVOX, whose version of Ghostbusters serves as our theme song. And last but not least, I want to thank you. We are less than 2 weeks away from the big holiday of the year for all of us who are Ghostbusters fans, and I can't wait to be celebrating it with you all, whether that's at the Firehouse, whether that's online, wherever. If you want to be in touch with me, you can of course reach me at Extraplasm on Instagram or X. You can reach me via email at extraplasmpodcast@gmail.com, or you can find Extraplasm on Facebook or on YouTube, of course, to get engaged or get involved. And again, if you're coming out to the Firehouse, make sure you say hi. Remember, we're 2 weeks away. It's an awesome time to be a Ghostbusters fan. Be excited, be thrilled, be happy, be healthy, and as Ernie Hudson reminds us every single week,
Try to have fun, and always keep on busting. Take care.